It's the end of the season, early October. Most riders in Central Europe are thinking about putting their bikes away, maybe squeezing in one last ride before the cold really sets in. Hardly anyone's planning multi-day trips through the Alps at this time of the year. But we were. We were just getting ready to kick off an 8-day motorcycle tour through the Swiss and French Alps, a proper end-of-the-season ride with a mix of familiar faces and new ones, and some of the most incredible roads in Europe waiting for us. No, we knew we were taking a bit of a gamble. October in the Alps can go either way. You might get golden autumn days, or you might get soaked, frozen and fogged in. Turns out, we got a bit of everything. We were about to ride into a trip full of twists in more ways than one. Rain, breakdowns, freezing cold, and a couple of surprises we definitely didn't see coming. But we also had some of the best riding, the best views, and a few moments that we'll be laughing about for a long time. This was now the second year in a row that I'd been planning and riding an end-of-the-season tour with Stefan and a group of friends. The year before, we explored the Central Alps together for the first time. An incredible trip that took us over the legendary roads like the Stelvio Pass, the Gavia Pass and the Tremola. For Stefan and his crew, it was their first time riding those iconic routes, and it left a lasting impression on all of us. Just like last year, this trip kicked off right after I got back from the Transitalia Marathon, a 5-day off-road event held in the heart of Italy. Around 400 riders from all over Europe come together for it, and this time was extra special because it was the 10th anniversary of the event. The final stage finished in none other than the city of Rome, which made the whole experience even more unforgettable. But not everything went smoothly. During the Transitalia Marathon, I had a crash that took out the entire left-hand side control cluster on my bike. That meant no ride modes, no cruise control, and worst of all, no heated grips. Not ideal when an October trip through the Alps is right around the corner. Luckily, Stefan had a KTM 1290 Super Adventure S sitting in Munich, and we were able to borrow the parts we needed to get my bike sorted just in time. Just one more thing to add to the prep list before heading out on another big ride. Every good trip starts with a solid crew, and this one was no different. First up, there's Stefan, owner of Adventure Motorcycle Rental, business partner and a good friend. He's an incredibly skilled rider, especially when they let him loose on the twisty mountain road. Bit of a speed demon, to be honest, and thankfully also the guy you want around when something breaks, because he knows how to fix just about anything on a motorcycle. That would come in handy more than once on this trip. Then we've got Raphael, Stefan's best friend since school, and the guy who runs point of the rental station in Munich. He's quiet, usually the one in the background, but he has his perfect timing to drop a one-liner just when you least expect it. Total engineering mindset in theory and practice. And like last year, he took the opportunity to test the durability of his panniers in, let's say, unconventional ways. Next is Jan. He's Stefan's buddy from Hamburg. We briefly met him on the Central Alps tour the year before. He's only been riding for 5 years, but he put serious time on his KTM ever since. And on this tour, Jan somehow managed to be at the center of some of the most memorable moments. More on that later. Then there's Dave. He's been a longtime friend of my brother's and mine. He's only got his motorcycle license the year before, but he's jumped in head first and has spent every free minute riding his BMW 1250 GS. On this trip, he sort of became our unofficial foreign minister. He started a conversation with pretty much anyone we came across. And then there's my brother Phil. This was the second big road trip after a tour of Norway together, and I was thrilled to convince him to carve out time for this adventure. I know how limited the spare time is, but I also know how much he loves motorcycle tours like this one. As a medical doctor, he made sure to bring extra supplies, which surprisingly came in very handy for some unplanned repair work on one of the bikes. Then there's me, the tour guide and official cameraman. This trip was more than just another adventure. It was also a great opportunity for me to fine-tune the guided tour I'm planning through the French Alps. With this group, we had a really wide range of skill levels, from beginners to very experienced riders. It gave me the perfect setup to test how to keep everyone engaged, safe and having fun, regardless of how long they've been riding. And of course, I had my camera rolling most of the time to capture it all. So that's the crew, 6 of us, geared up and ready for an 8-day ride through the French and Swiss Alps. Our journey would start and end in Munich, taking us first through the Swiss Alps and then into the heart of the French Alps, where we'd follow parts of the famous Route des Grandes Alpes. But first, we had to get there, and that meant several hours on the Autobahn, some of it in the rain. It's not the most glamorous side of motorcycling, but it's part of the deal. Cold, wet and not exactly scenic, but a necessary evil to make it to the good stuff. Once we've entered the smaller roads, the real ride began. The landscape started to change and we had our first major alpine highlight, the San Bernardino Pass. Normally it's a breathtaking view, one of those top 50 passes that's on every rider's list. But on this day, the summit was buried in low-hanging clouds and the visibility dropped to just a few meters. It gave the whole thing a moody, surreal atmosphere, not the kind of beauty we expected, but memorable in its own way. Not long after, near the Gotthard Pass, we rolled into our first accommodation of the tour. And true to biker tradition, it was time for a well-deserved boot beer, that first cold one you drink while still in your riding gear, boots and all. It was a perfect end to the first leg of the journey.
Number 2, we're very close to the St. Gotthard Pass, the old tremolo. We actually see it in the background. This is where we're going. This is the St. Gotthard sort of mountain region. We'll be doing 2 passes in that area, and then we're heading to France, where we spend the night tonight. I'm really surprised to have such a beautiful day. It's blue skies, couple of clouds. This is the mountain where we're going to go up to. First pass, straight ahead. Second pass is going to be the Forca Pass, also a really nice pass. And I thought we'd be having an overcast skies at least, or even rainy conditions. There's a chance that the Tremolo, the old Gotthard Pass that we're taking, that is still wet. That's cobblestone, so that makes it a bit more challenging.
By the time we reached the historic Tremolo Road, most of the moisture from the earlier rain had dried off. This road had also been part of a Central Alps tour the year before, and it's still one of my absolute favorites. The original construction dates all the way back to the 1830s, with a reconstruction in 1951. Since most of the traffic now takes the St. Gotthard Tunnel, this beautiful old cobblestone route stays relatively quiet, making it a gem for motorcyclists. As we climbed towards the summit, we entered the low-hanging clouds. The views at the tops weren't quite what we hoped for, but we still took a short break at 2,100 meters above sea level. It's always worth stopping here, even if the scenery is hiding behind the fog. This early part of the trip actually shared a few passes with last year's Central Alps route, including the Forca Pass. I've ridden the Forca Pass many times before, but this was the latest in the year I've ever been up there.
Even though I've done this pass multiple times, this is absolutely gorgeous.
At 2,429 meters, the surrounding peaks were already dusted with the first snow of the season. The Forca Pass became internationally famous after it appeared in the James Bond movie Goldfinger back in 1964, with Sean Connery driving his Aston Martin DB5 along its winding roads. Normally, this pass is packed with tourists and cars, but visiting so late in the season meant we had it nearly to ourselves, a rare treat.
Nice rainbow.
After descending from the Forca Pass, we realized we were ahead of schedule, so we decided to head up the Newfoundland Pass as well.
Considering the many times I've been up in this region, this is the first time I'm seeing it like this. There's a little bit of snow cap on the peak of the mountains, but not enough to close the roads off.
It had been a while since I'd been there. This pass is only open during the summer months, and with the snowfall around the corner, we were probably among the last visitors of the season. The big parking lot at the summit shows how busy it can get during peak times, but on this day, it was nearly empty. It felt like we had the whole place to ourselves.
This is how we get up to 300 kilometers a day. 50 of them are on the parking lot.
After catching a first glimpse of the snow for the season, we made our way back down and found a nice spot for lunch. It was surreal to experience such a shift in weather. Freezing temperatures and snow at the peak, followed by warm, almost summer-like conditions in the valley, all within the span of an hour. That afternoon, we hit our first hiccup. Dave's bike wouldn't start after lunch. It didn't take long to figure out the issue. His accessory lights had drained the battery while we were eating. Fortunately, Stefan came prepared and pulled out a starter battery to get us going again. Dave was so relieved, he volunteered to cover the first round of beers that evening. Fair deal, I'd say. We wrapped up the day in the town of Megave. It's a popular ski resort in the winter, but when we arrived it was still in that off-season hibernation mode. Beautiful, peaceful, and just what we needed. And of course, sticking to tradition, we kicked off the evening with a beer at the bar, boots still on, before heading into town to find some dinner.
Was ist das denn? Ich halte den Kopf, dass er diese ganz kleine Chance.
It is the beginning of day number 3 for us. We're in the entry point of the Route des Grands Alpes in France. We had this beautiful chalet resort in Megave. It's a skiing resort. It was pretty much empty. We had it all to ourselves. And today we're probably entering the Route des Grands Alpes, hitting about 5 of the top 50 passes that you get to see here in the West Alps. So it's going to be a cool day. Day's going to end on the Col d'Izoard, one of my favorite passes in the West Alps. And we picked the long route. I had 2 options today, an A and the B route. The guys wanted to do the long route, so this is what we do. So let's get going.
Day 3 started like any other day on the tour. Plenty of excitement and no idea what was really waiting for us. At that point, we didn't know it yet, but we wouldn't make it to our planned destination by the end of the day. We rolled out in good spirits and hit our first proper stretch of the Route des Grands Alpes. It's a legendary route for a reason. Almost 700 kilometers through some of the most scenic and dramatic roads in the French Alps. Our first highlight of the day was the Colmé de Roselin. It's not one of the highest passes in the Alps and you won't find it on every top 50 list, but it's a beautiful one and we were excited to get there. The only problem? Clouds. Thick, wet, cold clouds. It wasn't raining, but the air was completely saturated. Visibility dropped and the temperatures fell as we climbed. Still, we took a short break at the summit because that's what you do. A couple of quick photos, a few laughs and back on the bikes.
Dieses Jahr am Ende überall Vollgas geben.
As we dropped down to lower elevations again, the sky started to clear and the scenery changed. Autumn colors lit up the landscape and the road ahead looked like something out of a postcard. It was one of those moments that makes you forget how cold and wet you just were. But it didn't last long. The poor weather didn't dampen the group's mood though. If anything, it brought out the sillier side of a few riders. And if the weather doesn't crack a smile on your face, just wait until Stefan does something ridiculous. He always finds ways to keep the energy up. Our next challenge was the Col de la Madeleine, another iconic Tour de France climb and one of many along the route to Grand Alps. And just like earlier in the day, we went straight into low-hanging clouds and near zero visibility. At this point, the group was still riding strong, but there was this quiet tension building. The conditions weren't dangerous, but they weren't easy either. Just enough to make you second guess every line and every curve. And then, the real problem hit.
Voll auf der geraden Strecke, nicht gesehen, voll Steinlauf in der Mitte. Echt? Ich hab gedacht, ich hab geklappt.
Funny thing is, we didn't even notice it right away. It wasn't until we reached the top of the pass that Jan mentioned he had hit a rock early on the straight section going uphill.
Den Stein hast du mitgenommen?
Just a bit of bad luck. A small rock had deflected up and hit the underside of his engine. That's when we spotted it. A significant amount of oil leaking from his bike. Stefan jumped in immediately. He's exactly the guy you want in that moment. He pulled off his skid plate, took a look underneath and confirmed what we feared. Engine case damage. What looked like a minor impact had actually pushed a small bolt into the engine case, puncturing it and the oil filter cap. Oil was leaking out, and that's the last thing you want, especially if it ends up on the rear tire.
We are at the peak of the Col de Madeleine and we just ran into our first problem. Jan hit a hard object on the track and it hit the bottom of the engine and there's oil leaking, and it was quite a dangerous situation because the oil is getting on the rear wheel. So he noticed that he was slipping. It's already wet on the track.
First, we had to stop the oil from leaking. We used some of the luggage to carefully lay the bike on its side. When that wasn't enough, a few of the guys went over to a nearby parking area and came back with wooden crates. We used those to lift the tires and stabilize the bike enough to work on it and stop the oil leakage. Luckily, Jan did not crash on the way up the pass with all that oil on the rear tire, but now we had a bike that couldn't move. Visibility was poor, the air was damp and cold, and we were stranded on top of a mountain. But giving up wasn't even a thought. Luckily, I'd packed a few emergency supplies for situations just like this. One of them was a 2-component epoxy, rock solid once cured and resistant to high temperatures. I had used it before in similar issue during an off-road trip, so I knew it could potentially do the job. We got to work, sanding, mixing, cleaning. My brother, who's an orthopedic surgeon, even pulled out some disinfectant spray from the first aid kit to de-oil the area before applying the epoxy. He compared the whole roadside repair to an emergency operating room, where everyone jumps in, knows their role, and everything gets handled quickly and efficiently. We moved quickly, trying to seal both punctures before we lost more oil. Then came the hardest part, waiting. We gave it around an hour and a half to cure, hoping the fog wouldn't thicken and the temperatures wouldn't drop any further. No one said it out loud, but we're all thinking the same thing. What if it doesn't hold? finally it was time to find out. We fired up the bike, crossed our fingers and cautiously started the descent. All eyes were on the road and more importantly on the rear tire for any signs of fresh oil. But nothing. It held. We couldn't believe it. The fix worked, and just like that we were back in motion. After all the stress, all the unknowns, and the cold foggy wait at the summit, it felt incredible to be rolling again. We were incredibly lucky to be back on the road, but the delay had set us back. Because of the unplanned stop, we reached the Col de Galibier, one of the major highlights on the Route des Grands Alpes, much later than expected. By the time we got there, it was already getting dark, the fog hadn't lifted and the temperature had dropped to -1. It wasn't the moment we had hoped for at that legendary pass. So we made a call. We cut the ride short and headed for the town of Briançon. It wasn't part of the original plan, but honestly it didn't matter.
Quite the adventure.
We found a warm place, had a solid meal and laughed off the chaos of the day. After everything, just sitting together and sharing stories over dinner was the perfect way to wrap it up.
Kannst du unter 20 Minuten nicht bringen.
It's the beginning of day number 4 for our tour through the routes of the Grand Alps. Yesterday we had a puncture in the engine case of one of our KTMs, which set us back a few hours. We did a good part of the passes that we intended to do, but we left out the Col d'Izoard, which will be our first pass for today. Also, that means we're traveling from sort of the middle of the French Alps to the Mediterranean today. So we'll be hitting Monaco and Nice towards the end of the day. So it's going to be a very long riding day. Yesterday, when we sort of fixed the engine case puncture, we left the splash guard off just to see if it actually works. To see if it's sealing properly. So now it's time to put it back on.
We geared up and hit the road, and right away we were rewarded with one of the most beautiful days of the entire tour. The first pass of the day was the Col d'Izoard. It was originally supposed to be our final pass the day before, but now it became our first. And honestly, what a way to start the day. It's one of my absolute favorites. Riding it from north to south is just a pleasure. The climb, the curves, the scenery, it all just flows. But what really makes it special is how different both sides of the pass feel. The ascent is smooth and dramatic, and the descent opens up into these incredible views down the valley. We took our time at the peak to soak it all in before continuing on. Not long after, we ran into a roadblock, and out there, with so few alternative routes, that can be a real issue. We had to detour quite a bit until we got lucky. We ran into some locals who pointed us towards a small gravel road through the forest and mountains, a little shortcut around the closure. We weren't totally sure if it would work, but we gave it a try, and sure enough it worked. It turned out to be a fun little off-road section, and soon we were back on track.
In the French Alps.
Next up was the Col de Vals, another great pass I've ridden many times before. It's not quite as dramatic as some of the others, but it's still a fantastic ride, with a good flow and great views. But the real highlight of the day was the Col de la Bonnette. Now technically it's not part of the official Route des Grands Alpes, even though it probably should be. one of the highest paved roads in the Alps, and while some people call it the highest pass, that's not quite accurate. What gives it that reputation is the little loop that circles around the summit, making it the highest paved loop road in the Western Alps. It's a stunning pass, but it can get really busy during peak season. Luckily for us, riding it so late in the year meant we had it almost entirely to ourselves. And that made it feel even more special. I've been up there many times, but this one was different. Quieter, calmer, just us and the mountains. Originally the plan was to continue south all the way to Monaco and Nice, but between the delays earlier in the tour, the heavy traffic turning towards the coast, and the weather starting to turn again, we made the call to skip it. Instead, we found a place just north of Nice to stay the night. It looked like something out of the 1960s, stylish, kind of retro and maybe a little too fancy for a group of motorcycle riders. But it turned out to be a great spot. Good food, warm beds and the perfect place to wind down after another incredible day of riding.
Das ist ein irischer Whisky.
So we hit the midpoint of our journey last night. We stayed in this beautiful hotel, 60s design, I think, from architecture wise. Today's tour is going to go west, so we're going to hit the Verdun Canyon. Basically take every curvy road that there is, and then we'll head up back north again, back north to the Alps.
Day 5 kicked off with yet another beautiful morning. The weather was still holding strong and the Mediterranean Sea was almost within reach. Spirits were high, the sun was out, and we had one of the major highlights of the tour ahead of us, the Verdun Canyon. The Verdun Canyon is known for having better weather than high alpine region, and today was no exception. Warm, dry and clear skies all day long. It was the perfect setup for a full day of twisty roads and amazing views. We rode the canyon from one side to the other, starting on the northern side, winding our way around and coming back along the southern edge. Basically, we hit every curvy road we could find around the canyon. It's a paradise for motorcyclists. Endless turns, incredible views and hardly any traffic this late in the season.
Genau. So, jetzt können wir es aufheben.
Because we covered so much ground, this ended up being the longest day of the entire tour. But even after hours on the road, we weren't done just yet. As the sun started to set, we rode through the Dalui Canyon, another hidden gem of the region. It's one of the most beautiful canyon roads in France, with long stretches of balcony road carved into the red rock, hanging high above the valley floor. We rolled through just as it was getting dark, which made the whole scene feel even more dramatic. Eventually we reached our hotel for the night, and that's when we ran into a surprise that none of us will forget anytime soon. Enter the Andouilette incident. So we were sitting down for dinner, going through the menu, and the woman running the hotel recommends something special. Andouilette, a local sausage. Sounded harmless enough. Jan and Raphael decided to give it a try. Now none of us knew what Andouilette actually was. Spoiler alert, it's a French delicacy made entirely from intestines. The presentation was questionable. The smell was even worse, and the taste? Let's just say it left a lasting impression, not in a good way. When Jan was asked how he liked it, he gave a polite and reserved answer. I thought he was being a bit rude until I tried it myself. That first bite was hands down the worst thing I've ever tasted. The texture, the flavor, the smell, it was almost comically awful. We were all in tears laughing. It turned into one of those moments that sticks with you. The kind of ridiculous memory you keep bringing up every time the group gets back together. So yeah, day 5 had it all. Breathtaking roads, perfect weather, unforgettable scenery, and one truly disgusting sausage. And that's how we wrapped up another unforgettable day on the road.
It is the morning of day number 6 for us on a tour of the Route des Grandes Alpes. This is the place we stayed at. At the moment it looks pretty nice, it's 15 degrees, it's dry. We're still very much in the southern part of the French Alps, so today is all about getting back north again. The last major pass will be the Col de l'Iseran. We're not sure if it's open and if the conditions are good enough for us to ride a motorcycle, because it has been closed due to snow and cold weather conditions. And it's gonna get pretty rainy throughout the day, so we'll see.
You know that feeling when you hit the midpoint of a journey and suddenly the days just start flying by? That's exactly how day 6 felt for me. We started the day refueling in a small town near a hotel, and it kinda hit me. Somehow, we were already more than halfway through the trip. It's that moment where you realize how fast time moves once you're out on the road, fully in it. We had a long ride ahead of us, but the good news was we were back on schedule. After all the detours and delays early in the trip, we had finally caught up with the original route plan. One of the day's main highlights was the Col de Caillol. It's not one of the big name passes, but that's part of what makes it special. It's raw, a bit more remote, and it has this untouched feeling to it. There's not much going on at the summit, but the ride up and down is absolutely worth it. Flowing curves, almost no traffic, and gorgeous autumn landscape all around. When we got to the top, Dave noticed something was off with his bike. Turns out his oil level had dropped. Fortunately, we were prepared. Again, we had spare oil with us and Stefan jumped in right away, giving Dave a hand and getting him sorted out. The roads that day were stunning. Autumn was in full swing, down in the valleys, and we had some really peaceful stretches riding through golden leaves and open landscapes. One of the highlights for me personally came a bit later. Riding the Col d'Isoire again, but this time from the other direction, south to north. That gave Stefan and me a chance to just let it rip a little. Up until then, I'd mostly been hanging back, making sure the rest of the group was good, but this climb was just for us. We opened it up a little bit and chased each other up the mountain. Pure riding joy. Not long after that, the weather started turning again, just as forecasted.
We are in Italy right now. We just crossed the border from France to Italy. and we're heading to Montes, which is back in France again. But before we get there, we'll have to climb this pass. And as it looks, it goes up to 1800 meters, and we're kind of caught in the middle of the clouds. Also, the roads are wet now. It's not really raining, it's just wet. Once again, we're caught in the clouds.
As we climbed towards Col de Montigny, the fog rolled in. Thick, heavy fog that completely changed the atmosphere. It got so dark and misty that I honestly didn't realize at first that I had ridden that road before. Nothing looked familiar. But then, just as we broke through the cloud cover near the summit, everything changed. The view opened up and this massive reservoir came into sight. Absolutely beautiful. We stopped there for a bit, just watching the clouds roll across the landscape. It was one of those quiet, surreal moments that really stick with you. Then came the big question, do we go for the Col de Liseran? But it was already getting late and we had been riding for a long time. So we made the call to skip it for the day and find a place to stay nearby, just before the start of the pass. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. We found a place, had a well-earned boot beer, grabbed something to eat and called it a night.
It's the morning of day number 7 for us on the tour of the Route des Grandes Alpes. We're a bit behind schedule, so we have a long day ahead of us. The first pass will be the Col de Liseran, which we didn't do yesterday. And then we're still heading our way back up north again into Switzerland. If we're going to make the full tour, we'll be at the bottom of the Grimsel Pass, which was closed yesterday. But we'll see, maybe the weather changes and we have a chance to ride over the Grimsel and Zusen Pass back to Munich.
They say good things come to those who wait, and day 7 definitely proved that. After waking up and checking the latest updates, we were thrilled to see that the Col de Liseran was open. It had been closing off and on throughout our trip due to changing weather conditions, so we weren't sure if we'd actually get to ride it. But the day greeted us with blue skies and sunshine, and the road was clear. The Col de Liseran is the highest paved mountain pass in the Alps, and for that reason it's often called King of the Alps. It's also a regular feature of the Tour de France, and on this day we had it almost entirely to ourselves. As we rode higher, snow-capped peaks came into view and the air grew cooler. The climb up was absolutely beautiful, with long sweeping curves and that crisp high altitude air. When we reached the summit, it was nearly empty. I've been up there plenty of times before, but I've never seen it like that. No crowds, no noise, just peace and panoramic views. We spent quite a bit of time at the top, took some photos, soaked it all in. That big sign at the summit is usually surrounded by tourists. You practically have to take a number and wait your turn to snap a quick picture. But today, it was just us. We even met a cyclist who had made it up to the top totally on his own, and we gave him a celebratory wave as he rolled in. We chatted for a bit and shared a few laughs. It was one of those cool little moments you remember, not because it was planned, but because it just felt genuine. For all of us, I think it was the moment where the trip started to feel like it was coming to an end. That was the final major pass, and you could feel the group settling into a more reflective mood.
So we were super lucky to see the Col de Liseran in weather like this and empty like this. For a while we were the only ones at the end. Met this nice cyclist that came up here. And now we're on a downhill slope down to the valley. So October is a great time to see this area, but of course it's a gamble with the weather. We had our fair share of rain, but overall this is day number 7. We've been quite lucky to have weather like this. Despite the fact that the roads are still wet, but we get this beautiful scenery here, still in the morning sunlight. also pays to get up early in the morning. So this very likely will be the highlight of today's tour.
As we continued on, we started checking the weather forecast again, and sure enough, things were about to shift. So before crossing the Petit Saint-Bernard, we stopped for lunch. The sun was still shining, so we grabbed an outdoor table and ordered big burgers. Probably too much food for a mid-ride stop, but at that point we weren't too worried about it. And good thing we stopped when we did, because within 10 minutes of finishing lunch and heading back out, the weather flipped. The sky turned grey, the temperatures dropped, and that warm sunny day quickly turned into something completely different. By the time we reached the Grand Saint-Bernard, it was overcast and drizzling. Still a beautiful pass, but the clouds and fog swallowed up most of the views. We didn't stay long, just a few quick stops, and then down the pass onto a short stretch of Autobahn to wrap up the day. We ended the ride near the town of Goms in Switzerland, where we found a quiet little hotel, and most importantly, the final boot beer of the tour. We sat down to a great dinner and the mood was calm. Everyone kind of reflecting on the ride, the places we'd seen, the challenges we'd overcame. It had been a long, unforgettable journey. And we had just one more day to go.
This is the day when we head back to Munich, and today we're not so lucky with the weather. It's gonna be raining pretty much the entire time.
We had been pretty lucky with the weather overall, but this one was going to be a rain ride. But what we didn't know was just how intense it would get. The forecast said rain, sure, but as we left the hotel we still weren't sure how the day would unfold. We had 3 more top 50 passes in Switzerland on the list, and there was a big question mark over whether we'd do any of them.
We are approaching the Grimsel Pass, which is right in front of me. The hairpin turns up the mountain there in the most beautiful weather you can think of. Yeah, it's raining, but it's not so bad. It's only 8 degrees. It'll be cold up there, but it's almost better if it rains like this rather than it being sort of semi-wet road surfaces. You actually have more grip when it's like this.
Originally the plan was to just ride the Grimsel Pass, a solid one to wrap things up. But once we got going we kept pushing. One pass turned into 2 and eventually we tackled all 3, Grimsel, Soesten and Klausen Pass. By the time we reached the last one, we were completely soaked, despite having proper Gore-Tex gear. The rain didn't let up for a second. It wasn't just a drizzle, it was relentless, heavy rain from morning to evening. By the time we made it back to Munich, we had been riding in pouring rain for almost 9 hours. And the most amazing part, no one complained. The mood was still good, spirits were still high, and even though we're all cold, wet and exhausted, the energy in the group never dropped. We rolled into Munich, and just like that, our tour came to an end. Not with sunshine or fanfare, but with soaked gloves, fogged visors and a sense of accomplishment that only comes after a ride like that.
This has been the longest rain ride ever. 9 hours in the strongest possible rain. We had maybe the last 20 minutes where it wasn't raining. Everything is wet, despite a good climb suit. But we're back. We made it back. It's a long freaking day. We're happy to be back. Geile Tour. I've never been happier to arrive. Etsy, Alter. Oh.
It was the perfect kind of imperfect ending. Tough, memorable, and something we'll all be talking about for a long time.